Hey everybody, it's Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Our question today is simply, how did I not know I was queer earlier? I've heard this question so often, and eventually, yes, many of you have asked this question, or else you probably, wouldn't be watching this video. Traditionally, pre-pandemic, the trend was younger and younger and younger for people to understand they're either not cisgender or not heterosexual. When the pandemic hit, we found this trend of people in older age brackets in different stages of life who were forced to take a different look at their lives and therefore end up realizing that the truth of who they were had either changed or been denied for so long that something, being locked into your home maybe, or seeing the fact that the world didn't look the way that we thought it did anymore, whatever it was, something tipped the scales for them and they were no longer able to either ignore the knowledge or deny the knowledge that they once had. But in that, we hear people who say,
how come I didn't know this earlier?
Or I feel so silly because I didn't know this about myself earlier.
If I had known earlier, this would be easier, or that would be easier.
I'm going to take you through the 3 reasons why you didn't know earlier, and then we're going to talk about why we're asking that question in general, because that's pretty important. The first reason that you didn't know earlier is the heteronormative expectations of society as a whole, and likely your own family. When a couple has a child, and say that child is assigned female at birth, that child then grows up with the expectations of whatever society at that time has decided that a girl is. She's given dolls, she's given pink and purple and dresses and girly things, and that is the expectation of who she's gonna be. And along with that, not just about being girly or what our society calls feminine, both of those are problematic, by the way, and that's another video. That whole evolution also comes with the expectation that you will start dating at the time that your family has deemed appropriate for you to start dating. You will then marry that man or some other man that you date, and you will then procreate and have children and do the same thing to them, and that's how society functions. That expectation is in tiny little things your whole life. And that's what a heteronormative expectation is. It is expected that you are heterosexual. It's also expected that you are cisgender because that's implied in the heteronormativity of society. And when you don't fit that mold, you often just assume there's something wrong with you, and so you change those things to fit that mold. Because everybody in your life couldn't be telling you something that you're supposed to be or you're supposed to understand and be wrong. Your experience is obviously the one that you have to change. That's how our brains work. And until you get to a point where you can really work through that, of course you're not going to know. Reason number 2 why you didn't know earlier is internalized homophobia. Internalized homophobia is the internal assumptions and meanings that you assign to inclinations of yourself or others that are not heterosexual. Or also, it's the negative assumptions you carry about being gay or being bi or being pan and the understanding of why that can't possibly be something that you are because of that negativity. Some of those internalized homophobia thoughts are,
it's going to be harder to find somebody to date.
It's going to be harder to have kids.
It's going to be harder to do the things that I want to do in a relationship that society doesn't actually openly accept on a larger scale.
So internalized homophobia has a big part to play in pushing down those understandings of yourself, or not even exploring them in the first place to push them down, because the idea of doing things the harder way is not intrinsically a normal human desire. Humans take the path of least resistance most of the time. And the only reason that we don't is when the pain of staying in that path of least resistance and then what we're denying, the pain of that is greater than our fear of changing. That's when we change. Which means in this case, we change from being homophobic internally or externally and then become accepting of ourselves as we are. That's that change. Number 3 is a lack of experience, lack of role models, lack of queer folk in all forms of media and all forms of society in general. The normalization of heterosexuality, the normalization of someone identifying with the gender they're assigned to at birth is everywhere. And because of that, especially if you don't have anyone in your life who is encouraging you to explore who you are as queer and allowing you to become more of who you are inside, you might not have the words or even the understanding that it would be a possibility for you to not be sexually attracted to the opposite sex or anyone in general also. If you are not growing up with the permission to explore those options as options for who you are. You are not going to explore them until you're in a place that you're safer, or that you are exposed to the idea that you could possibly explore other ways of being that are truer to who you are. Okay, so those are your 3 reasons as to why you probably didn't know when you were younger. Here's the real question that I want to ask you, though. If this is a question you're asking yourself, this would be my response to you. Why does it matter? What would have been better or easier if you had known when you were younger rather than when you knew? For many people, it's, again, 3 reasons. The first reason is you feel like you missed out. Those times when you were younger, when love and attraction was more innocent and easier and maybe even more fun, that seems like it could have been a totally different level for you had you known the truth of who you were. You feel like you're late to the game. You feel like you've missed out on the ways that people talk and the way this area of society operates, and you kind of feel out of your element then, even though you're being true to who you are. Who you are is playing catch up in this other area. So had you known earlier, you wouldn't currently feel like you're playing catch up. The number 2 reason is loss of marriage and family. Many people who've realized who they are later in their relationship are often in serious relationships, have children, are married sometimes. Saying goodbye to all of that in order to pursue who you are understanding yourself to be is scary. And a lot of people will opt for opening the relationship either with or without their spouse's consent. Let me take a minute to just remind everybody that ethical non-monogamy is fantastic when it's done respectfully. When it is done disrespectfully or with the interest of someone being able to preserve on hold this life in case the life they're pursuing doesn't work out, that's not ethical non-monogamy. All marriages are absolutely permitted to have the rules that they lay out. And if both people are wholeheartedly committed to changing the rules of their marriage or of their long-term relationship, have at it. Often, though, what we end up seeing is people who are scared to explore this new thing at this later date in their lives and lose what they already have, that they want to keep what they already have on hold in case this other thing doesn't work out. And that's usually unfair to everyone in the situation. The number 3 reason why people are asking this question is because it is hard to deal with the discomfort of exploring a new version of you right now. So in our minds, if we'd done it in the past, we don't have to deal with that right now, which is literally true. If you've already done it, you don't have to do it again. But would you have been ready? Can you say absolutely for certain you would have been ready back then, whenever that in your mind is the perfect time for you to figure it out? Would you have been ready? Did you have the ability to know? Many people will say once they figure out who they are, they look back on their life and they think, how did I not know? Some people will say they did know and didn't think things were possibilities, so they buried it and just went along to get along. Both of those stories are so common because we live in a society that is heteronormative and expects us to behave and be a certain way. And if you're not going to be that way,
At least don't be loud about it.
right?
At least don't rub it in our faces.
That's what society says. Your path is your own path, though. And if you didn't get to a tipping point for you to take a step or two in the direction of self-actualizing this part of you, there was a reason for it. And that reason is largely attached to who you are. Even if you had the ability to go back and redo it and do it younger, it would not be what you're imagining it would be, because you would not be the same person you are when you have realized this. When we regret parts of our journey, it is usually because we want to erase pain. That's a completely understandable need. In these particular situations where you did not realize about yourself until later in your life who you were and are now trying to figure out either how to do that or what you want to do with that information, you would likely be feeling the same ways even if you had done this earlier. Instead of regretting the fact that you didn't know, is it at all possible for you to be grateful for the fact that you know now? I'm not talking about toxic positivity where we just slap a happy face on it and make it good. I'm saying in reality, you are where you are, and your experiences have brought you where you are. And what is coming next, you are uniquely prepared and preparing yourself to do because it's your experience and not anyone else's. When we compare our experiences to others, we cheapen both experiences. in these situations, it's not about whether our roads are easier or harder had we known earlier or when we know now. It's about what do you do with the information now that you have it? How do you pave your road forward with your current circumstances, with the things that are around you, with the abilities that you have, and the stories that you carry? How do you move forward into being a more authentic version of you now? That's it for today. I hope you found this helpful. If you do, please go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you all next week. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.